Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Events Management Journal podcast. My name's James Cannell, and I'm here with my co-host, Alan File. Hi, Alan.
Hi, James. Morning, everybody. Hi, Finland.
Hi, Finland. We're here with Maarit Kinnunen and Antti Honkanen from Finland, who are going to talk to us about their new paper in events management, Inappropriate Behavior, at Finnish Live Music Events. So we're really pleased to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent.
It's very nice to discuss about this interesting and very important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely an important topic for us to be looking at. One of the great things about that we're enjoying about this podcast is the diversity of research that we're getting to talk about and discuss. And your paper, I think, is such an important topic and a really moving read. But before we get to it, I wonder if you could just start off by telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe what you're working on at the moment, and just give us a bit of background. Because Maarit, over to you.
Okay. At the moment, I'm living in central Finland in Jyväskylä, middle of forest. The only thing I can see are trees and snow. There's still snow in Finland. So I'm a visiting scholar at the University of Lapland, even though the University of Lapland is in Rovaniemi, which is northern part of Finland. I live in the central part of Finland. So I'm a visiting scholar only, so it's my affiliation. And I also have some part-time research work for LiveFin, which is an association for live music event organizers in Finland.
Okay.
And also for Jazz Finland. And occasionally also to other associations that need some help for their research work.
Thanks for that, and I think we'll probably come back to some of those links a bit later on when we're discussing, because of the way that you got your data and the information that you have from this really large sample that you've used. Clearly, those links have been really vital for this. Antti, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, it's a very long story. Actually, I have long career in academic life in university as a professor and director of institute, but 2 years ago I changed it to work in business sector. But actually today I'm first time in the University of Turku as part-time researcher, once back again. Sociology is in my background, but mostly I have worked in tourist studies, and that's why I'm also researching this event field.
Thanks for that. And that brings us quite nicely to the first question that we tend to ask people. Maybe we can start with you, Antti. Is you say you've had by the sounds of it, a diverse journey to get to where you are now. How did you end up researching events as a field? How did you end up, maybe you do or don't define yourself as an events researcher, but how did you end up researching events?
It's about 15 years ago. We have a project which was financed by local municipality, and the research topic was the economical impact of events. And that's how I was in this events research, part of event research. But actually reason why I am doing nowadays this, it's Maarit. So Maarit has asked that I can participate in her research, and that's why I'm here. So Maarit maybe can tell more.
Oh yeah, well, in my case, it's a long story. I worked for 30 years in the ICT business as project manager, and I got fed up with that. And so when I got my 50 years crisis, I started to study again. I started my new career, so I went to learn about events, and then I went to University of Lapland to study tourism research. And when I was doing or seeking for my master's thesis, the festival organizers were so nice and welcoming to help me with collecting the data, so that it was only maybe only because of their positive attitude towards research, that I started to study festivals, mainly festivals, music festivals, and I have been there, well, since something like 2012.
Right.
When I did my master's, and then I did my doctoral thesis on festivals as well.
Can I ask, Maarit, of all the subjects related to festivals and events, and we were saying just before we came online, I grew up at festivals and events, so I found your paper fascinating. How did you settle on the subject of inappropriate behaviour? Because there's obviously many different dimensions. Antti, you said you come from the more economic side. So how did you fall onto this spot, which clearly is a very important spot, but how did you arrive here?
Well, I have to admit that at the beginning of my research career, I was writing papers that were describing festivals very positive, so that they are full of sense of community and people are happy and everything's fine. But then gradually I understood that there is also another side of this situation, and basically when we were defining the questions for the survey, because our research data is based on Finnish Festival Barometer and Finnish Venue Barometer, that are audience surveys. They are administered by LiveFin. And when we were looking what are the questions we would include in the 2022 questionnaire, it was very up to date at the moment, the subject of inappropriate behavior, because there was a recent study about Finnish musicians' experiences of inappropriate behavior and sexual harassment. And then there was also an Instagram account called Punks2, which revealed in a very, very sad way the harassment, sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, belittling of females and non-binary gender people, and even rapes that happened in the punk scene in Finland. And that was something that it was in all the papers, and people were writing about it, because it was so strange in a way, because punk music is considered as a egalitarian area, and people who are in that scene, they value for certain, well, that you should respect people, and they have got very liberal attitudes and so on. But this showed that it happens everywhere. So we decided with the LiveFin organization, we decided that we will have a separate section for questions about inappropriate behavior, and we had a meeting with some experts, and then we were studying the other surveys that were handling the same question.
Because I wanted to ask you about this, because you said you have links with these organisations, and one of the features of your paper, I think, is that you've had access to these really large data sets.
Mm-hmm.
Could you maybe just explain it a little bit for our listeners? What was involved in making those partnerships, and was it easy to get these questions into the survey?
Well, the Finnish Festival Barometer, it has been conducted since 2014, and I have been there from the beginning, and
Right.
And it was started by the initiative of one Finnish rock festival, one of the biggest one, Provinssi, and they wanted me to be included there to analyze the questions. And so I have been with that survey. It's conducted every second year, and I have been doing the survey questionnaire every time. And my request for participation was that I want to have access to the data, and so they agreed with that, and then Antti is helping me with the statistical analysis especially, and also in other issues, and so we started with something like maybe 5,000 responses, but then more and more festivals got interested in distributing this survey, and so finally we got nearly 20,000 responses.
Wow.
And it's a really big set of data, and we are going to have a new survey this year, and I'm expecting that we should get at least 16,000 answers, probably more, because also now the festival goers are used to this festival barometer, that they know that it's coming.
And most
I certainly think it's the largest sample we've seen on the podcast that we've had so far. So, it's impressive.
Almost all questions are same every year, but there are also part for those new questions. For example, these questions which we have used in this time, they haven't been before that. But is it so, Maarit, that they are also in next barometer? I don't know.
We haven't discussed with the LifeIn yet about the contents of the next questionnaire, but I will be suggesting that we will include the same questions again, so that we have some comparisons, and that would be another paper if there have been any changes in 2 years.
Yeah, because also festivals understand how serious the situation is, that and they are trying to do something, and of course it's really interesting to look what will happen in future.
Because many of your findings are actually quite disturbing in a way. Actually, I was reading it last night, thinking, "Wow, this is pretty powerful stuff." What were the main sort of learnings you took from it? What were the real sort of wow moments for you in terms of the findings that which obviously are very deep and very broad at the same time? But what did you really take from your study?
Well, actually, when the survey was going on, I was monitoring the results all the time, and I got more and more anxious and also sad when I noticed that after receiving something like 5,000 responses or so, the results and the answers, they were stabilizing, so that we could see that now it's 30% of people have experienced some kind of inappropriate behavior at festivals, and it stayed the same until the end of the survey. So I started to think about it already when the survey was going on, and then when we are thinking that over 20% of male participants have experienced inappropriate behavior, but it's a different kind of inappropriate behavior that they face when you compare it to the females. So for male, the most important, if you could say that so, type of inappropriate behavior are physical threats. Well, that's not a surprise. There are the other research that says so as well. For females, it was the sexual harassment and harassment because of gender, and 1/3 of the respondents had experienced that. But the most disturbing fact was that it was nearly 2/3, over 60% of non-binary persons that had experienced inappropriate behavior. And that was the one that shocked me a bit. It shocked me a lot, not a bit, but a lot.
But then it's also important to understand that festivals, they are some way a mirror to society. So what happens in festival, it happens everywhere. Festivals are a little bit different place because there are so many people in a small place together, and also because quite many are drinking alcohol. And it affects, but if we compare these numbers, what happen in restaurants every weekend, and so they probably are also quite high. So it's also good to, of course, festivals should be as safe as possible, and there are a lot of things that festivals can do so that there weren't so much these harassments. But anyway, it's also a mirror of society. So it seems that our society has a problem, not only festivals.
And it's interesting what you say there about alcohol, because that's something that comes through very strongly in your discussion, is a sense that the music events in Finland are becoming more dependent on alcohol sales for their viability. And so,
Yes,
will we expect these issues to get worse?
yes, that's true. And also, especially in the venues, because the venues in Finland, they are quite small, all the clubs. We don't have many big clubs. So it's very big part of their economy, the alcohol sales, so that they can keep the ticket prices reasonable and still get well-known artists there. And that's a problem. But one of the things that is a bit encouraging is that the alcohol consumption in Finland for the young people, it's decreasing, and it's decreasing quite a lot in this century or this millennium. It has been decreasing, and this means that there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, because the younger generation, they are not using as much alcohol, and there are lots of people who don't drink at all. And that's a good thing when you are thinking about prejudices, because prejudices, they when you drink alcohol, you are not so controlled.
Yeah, it can bring out the worst in a crowd, can't it?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, Mark, because the alcohol consumption is plummeting here as well, and I don't know if it is in Britain, but with the younger states, it's really falling off a cliff, which on the one hand is a good thing. Counter to that is, and I think this is particularly true in Britain, so many clubs, venues, festivals, they're closing.
Yeah.
And reading at the weekend, so your study really is coming at a time where there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people struggling, and I just wonder, does it just displace this activity to somewhere else? Because I think reading through it's like, well, it doesn't matter if people to the left wing or the right wing, we're all just people, and this sort of behaviour just seems to continue. And I did wonder, it's a bit like we call it the Las Vegas factor here. If you go for a weekend in Las Vegas, you assume you're going to do things there that you would never ever do at home, and it's acceptable. It's Vegas, so it's all a bit of a laugh. It's a bit of a giggle, and I think to some extent festivals probably fall into that trap as well. Whatever you do, it's acceptable because it's a festival. So it's a bit of a mindset more than anything else. In a negative sense,
yeah. There are festival goers who are not going to listen music actually at all. They are going there because it's party, and of course it affects very strongly also to those who are listening music there. But it's also a big problem for venues, because now the big question is that how venues can survive without alcohol consumption, because money is coming from alcohol, and then if tickets are more expensive, maybe they don't have people visiting there anymore. So this is very big question. But of course, if we are thinking about this harassment, the relationship between alcohol consumption and harassment, it's probably quite strong.
And there's really interesting point about the intersectionality of these issues in your data, and something that really struck me was the more I can't quite remember how you phrased this, but it was if you were somebody who was at an event and had a disability and was also part of a gender minority, then it kind of compounds the problem. You were even more likely to be the target of antisocial behaviour. Could you talk a little bit about that, because I think that was a really strong finding you had.
Antti could tell about that. You did the analysis for the when you are belonging to several minorities.
It's this was very big question. We found from data that it seems that it affects very strongly if you are part of different minority groups. The risk is really high. It's really high. Almost everybody has are victim for harassment, and it's sometimes quite difficult to understand how it affects, so that when you are so member of several, it affects so strongly.
Yeah, that was really, I found that just on a human level just incredibly disappointing. That the more the more disadvantages, for want of a better word, or the more of an outsiderness that somebody has, the more they became a target. I felt more vulnerable. I thought that was not
There was a
happy.
moment where people were questioning the disability, which you think, did that really happen? So no, it quite shocked me, to be honest. Yeah, it's like, wow. So where do you take this study? Because obviously I think you've got the foundations for a major. To me, this isn't just a paper. This is a major study. So where do you go next with this? Because I think there's so many different dimensions here, and I'm sure festival organisations the world over will actually find this really, really useful in terms of how they plan, accommodate, and actually manage these things in the future.
Yeah, when we were thinking about this, how to proceed, when we were talking about that with Antti, we were thinking that we will concentrate next on gender minorities, because that is definitely an under-researched area, and also disabled people, because it was quite shocking to see how much harassment disabled people are facing in Finnish festivals. And so we decided to concentrate on those minorities next. So we have interviewed some members of these minorities, and we are preparing paper, or actually several papers, about experiences of gender minorities and experiences of disabled people at Finnish festivals, and we will be concentrating on festivals next. So that's where we are heading now.
Yeah, to me, actually, how to say, it was surprised that also those disabled people, how much harassments towards them are in festivals. I didn't know it before our research. I believe that they don't have so much problems. Sexual minorities, some way I know, because, how to say, society, I know that they have problems in society in general, so I also expected that situation is in the same at festivals, but this was a bit shocking to me.
And do you think there's anything particular? Your work has a really strong focus on what's happening in Finland. You talk about how there's a lot of research that's been done in kind of Anglophone Western countries, New Zealand, Canada, whatever. Do you think there's something that's particular to Finland about the pattern or the scale of this? Or do you suspect that if you did this research in other markets, you'd get very similar results?
I think it's everywhere in the Western world, because at least the harassment figures are the same in Finland as in the UK, according to the previous research. And unfortunately, I think it's the same everywhere, but it hasn't been confirmed. That's only my guess. Sorry.
There maybe can be difference between countries where alcohol consumption is high and those countries where alcohol consumption isn't so high. But other way, I think that it's quite similar situation.
In many ways, I think that's so disappointing, isn't it? Because at a superficial level, you always, if you're from Western Europe, you always view Scandinavian culture and society as a bit more balanced, a little bit fair, a little bit more egalitarian. And you're like, actually, it's no different, which I found really, really sad, actually.
That's true.
On the surface, it might look like that, but it's not.
Moving on towards the end of our discussion, one of the things that we like to ask people, everyone who comes on the podcast, is whether you've got any tips or advice for people looking to get into this area of research or events management research generally. You've come at this, talking about your careers at the beginning, you've come at this through different paths. Is there any advice you think you could pass on to maybe early career researchers, PhD students who'd like to go down this path?
Well, if you are heading for the event research, I would say that it's important to network with the event organizers, because that's the area where you can get the research data. So that's probably the most important thing. And then of course I couldn't stress more about conference participation, because especially in small conferences you make connections, and for instance I have met a couple of persons with whom I nowadays write articles together with, and that wouldn't have happened never ever if I wouldn't have participated in these conferences. So I think those are my advice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting hearing our
concerns at the moment, because budgets are so tight the world over, that I think the new generation are losing the opportunities that we seem like an old man here, but I think we took it for granted that you went to conferences. And I'm still writing now, Maarit, with people I met nearly 30 years ago at physical conferences. So there's a real danger that a short-term economic problem will have, much deeper, longer-lasting problems down the line. So I agree with you.
Really, Antti, do you have anything to pass on?
Yes, quite similar. I think that don't write alone. Try to get other researchers with you so that we can share tasks and ideas. And so we wrote this paper only we two, but sometimes we had wrote with several, 4 people, even 5 people. And it's always better when there are more people thinking and giving good hints and so on. And it's easy. Networking is really important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And keep it going. Sounds like this one, James, because we always finish with, I'm always fascinated with the answers that people provide us with. Is there one article, either from the journal or elsewhere, that you've read recently which has been really impactful that you recommend other people should read? I really like asking this, just because you've had some really random finale. Is there anything that you've read of late which you really think people really should read this for whatever reason?
I liked very much the paper written by, well, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it was Thomas Perneczky, and his students. So it was sexual harassment and violence at events and festivals, a student perspective. I think that his approach was very interesting because he wrote a paper with students, and the students were doing the work, and he's also describing the process of this research, and I think it was very inspiring for me, at least.
What about you, Antti? Have you read anything of late which has really had a powerful impact on you?
Well, I'm more like methodology man, so
Okay.
There must be inspiring methodology papers out there. I'm sure there are. If not, maybe we should be writing them.
Let me throw what I was reading at the weekend. So I despite living in Florida, I'm an avid Guardian reader, and it was the 40 years? I think was it 30 years? The review of the miners' strike in Britain in the mid to late 1980s. And it was really, really powerful, because I went to be a student in 1984, so it was all being also swing. And it was really it was a fascinating read, but it was a disturbing read in many ways, because there's so many different dimensions, and the outcomes are still impacting people today, which I just felt staggering. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So read The Guardian, folks. Miners' strike at the midnight.
Read about the miners' strike.
Yep.
And Thomas Panetsky's article as well. We'll make sure that we put a link to that up in the show notes when we put this up online, so that our viewers and listeners can go and have a look at that as well. I just want to say thank you very much for your time. It's the first time we've had a podcast with two guests on it. And so it's changed the dynamic a little bit, and that's been really refreshing and really nice. It's great to have more opinions
before either.
And Alan's camera has gone a kind of purpley pink colour. So no idea what's happened there. But thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate that, and really recommend people go away and read your paper. I think it's methodologically interesting, but the impacts of the work you do are potentially massive and so important for people studying events. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.